Okay, so I guess we can start. So I was going to continue a little bit or summarize a little bit some of the things I was talking about yesterday during the Dhamma talk. So again, I want to focus a bit on metta meditation because I think metta is important. It's important as a purifying process. You purify your heart, and when you purify yourself, you actually gradually you give rise to this very important and like pivotal quality of mindfulness that's required for meditation to really work. So mindfulness is really what we're trying to get to, and these other things are like aids to support that mindfulness in a sense. And in, of course, an important part of metta, as I was mentioning yesterday, is also what we do in daily life, how we interact with people, how we act, how we speak, and all of these things are actually acts of metta if we do them in the right way. When you act with somebody in a kind way, then that actually is an act of metta. And then the idea is to bring some of that into our metta meditation to actually empower the meditation. So the most important part of the metta meditation, the loving kindness, the goodwill meditation, is actually to be able to give rise to the right kind of mind state whereby you have goodwill towards somebody else. That is the most important part. How can we give rise to that mind state? What is that mind state? How can we get it started? And often you hear people trying different kind of objects to make it easy to have goodwill towards somebody, as an animal, a person, or whatever. And in the suttas, the Buddha often just says, you just use a direction, like the western direction or the eastern direction. But regardless of what object you use, how do you give rise to the right mind state? The first thing to remember is that metta, first and foremost, is an intention. It's something that you are wishing for other people or other beings or for yourself. So the main thing about metta is an intention. Now with that intention, of course, also comes a feeling. And certainly if the metta is working, there's also a feeling that comes with the intention itself. But what exactly is that intention and that feeling that goes with it? How can we kind of tap into a memory, perhaps, of what it means, so that we can bring that memory up in the meditation and then like superimpose that memory on the situation you're in now, on the people you want to have metta towards now. And one way of looking at that is to think, if you've been living a good life for a long time, sometimes you can reflect back and you can think of a particular occasion when you did something kind towards somebody, you said something kind towards somebody. It may not even be a single occasion, it can be many perhaps. But remind yourself what your mind state was like when you did that. And the best kind of person to think about when you did something kind towards somebody is not necessarily a friend or a family member or somebody you know, because very often the kindness that comes with people that we know, sometimes there's a little bit of vested interest there. Or sometimes we expect something back, we expect maybe a thank you at least, or there's some kind of interaction between us and the other person. But the most pure kind of giving, whether it's an act or verbal, is to people that we don't know, to strangers, right? So can you, and this is sometimes happened, or sometimes we actually do kind acts to strangers. Sometimes it just comes naturally. One day you feel like doing something nice to somebody you never met before, and you know that you may never meet them again. And you don't really care if they are grateful, you don't care if they are thankful, you don't care if they smile to you or anything. You just do it because it feels right to do it. That is the purest kind of metta in practice, because there's no expectation of anything in return. So what does that feel like? Think back, what does it feel like when you do something purely because you want to be kind, nothing else? What is that intention? What is that feeling? Reflect back on the time when this happened to you. And if you have difficulties coming up with memories, or it doesn't come maybe so natural to you, then make sure you keep on practicing these things in daily life. And eventually one day will come when you do an act, it comes by itself, that is just very pure and very natural and very kind, and it comes some goodwill inside of you. And when you see that inside of you, then you know roughly what metta is like. That's like the beginning stage of metta. When you do something to somebody purely, completely selflessly, completely kindly. And then you come back to your meditation practice. You sit down, you close your eyes, you visualize perhaps just the eastern direction, all the beings in the eastern direction. And you remind yourself of that mind state you had on that occasion when you did something very kind and beautiful towards somebody else, somebody you don't know, whatever. And then it's like you superimpose that state of mind onto that direction. And then when you say to the beings out there, may you be well, may you be happy, you actually start to see that it actually does come from your heart, because you are actually doing the same thing you did at that time when you did something nice to somebody. So this is just an aid to help you access that metta. I remember some time ago there was somebody, actually he's here now, who said that you should fake it until you make it with metta practice. So that is one of the problems. But we try, but by doing this, we can fake a little bit less and access that emotion a little bit more. And then it's just a skillful way, basically, of trying to access that emotion, that intention inside of you, which comes with that emotion of goodwill towards somebody else. Okay, so let's try some of these things and see what happens. Okay, so let's start as usual by just sitting nice and comfortably. Make sure you have no stress of any kind in the body, no tensions. You're nice and relaxed. And make any adjustments you have to make. Make sure you, the tension, as I always say, often tends to collect in certain parts of the body. So make sure all those places where tension often collects are really nice and relaxed. So when you sit here, you're comfortable, you feel at ease, you feel good, nothing feels wrong. It's actually pleasant to just sit here quietly, nicely, with nothing to do. Just start off as normal, just by allowing everything to be here, Don't do anything, don't strive for anything. Yeah. Just allow things to be, and allow things just to calm down, allow things to be easy, nice and relaxed, and accepting things as they are. just try to enjoy the peace and see how wonderful it is to have absolutely nothing to do. Just to sit there absolutely peacefully. Nothing to do in the whole world. Peace is the opposite of doing, the opposite of action. And see the beauty of that peace. now see if you can bring to mind an occasion when you did something very selfless, very kind towards another person. Maybe a person that you don't know very well or even don't know at all. Somebody you had no relationship with. But it was a kind, pure, nice act towards somebody else. And bring up to mind what that act actually felt like. Bring up that mind state and then take the meditation from there. And now you can imagine in your mind a certain direction, the eastern direction, and use that mind state, that intention, that feeling that you have found in the past, and use that to wish all the beings in the eastern direction, may you be well, may you be happy, in the same way that you had that mind state at some previous occasion. And allow yourself to wait, to see if that well-wishing has an effect, and just wait. And if nothing happens, then try again, and then wait again, and keep on working like that. Now turn your attention to the northern direction instead. And if you find that the meditation is working so far, then do exactly the same thing that you're doing now towards the north. And if you find that it's not really working too well, then try to change your meditation subject just very slightly and see if you can give rise to the right feeling. And this time try, instead of using a human being, try an animal instead, and remind yourself of the vulnerability of these animals, how difficult it is to be an animal in this world. And think of some sort of kindness towards these animals, from the past perhaps, and then bring that into the northern direction. May you all be well. May you all find a release from problems and suffering. now bring your attention to the western direction and just remind yourself for a few moments that whenever you have kindness and compassion for people, for animals, even for the entire world, what you are giving is you're giving a sense of safety, security, trust and confidence in those beings out there. So imagine that you are, in a sense, your compassion is like a big blanket, a warm, comforting, secure blanket rolling out in the western direction. And as it rolls out, it embraces people on the way, and they feel a sense of trust, a sense of security, a sense of confidence. And this is what you're giving to the world. And lastly, change your attention to the south and all the people, all the animals in the south, including all the people, all the monks at Bodhinyana Monastery. You can also include the nuns and everyone staying at Dhammasara Monastery at the same time. And from your heart say, I wish you all the peace, all the happiness in the world. From your heart, make it genuine, true kindness coming from yourself to all those beings in those directions. Okay, that's the end of the meditation. So sit nice and comfortably here. Okay, does anybody have any comments or questions or anything here? Anything they want to say here?
Yes, Ajahn.
There, yes. Hugh.
Yes, I was just commenting on this practice of metta. And if sometimes when I'm in a group where there may be prisoners in a prison or people trying to get off drugs and alcohol, you kind of get a feeling of the sort of hopelessness of their situation, that they're where they are. You think, well, a feeling comes up of sort of empathy or compassion, I suppose, for their situation, and tears come to the eyes because of it. And it's a kind of, just a comment that that sort of thing I do notice sometimes, not every time, but sometimes.
Yeah, good. No, that's great. I mean, and that's the thing is, very often with these sort of meditations, you have to do things your own way at the end. You have to find a way that works for you. And if you feel that works for you, that you can sort of have empathy with somebody who's in a very difficult situation, you're trying to help them out, you don't gain anything from this, you just do it out of kindness. Wonderful. Use that as your thing here. That's why sometimes you have to use little different things. Sometimes you find that during a meditation like this, sometimes it bites a little bit, and it doesn't bite, and then it works and it doesn't work. It goes a bit back and forth. And you have to find how it works for you. And then that is where you kind of try to work with it. And you also find that sometimes you have to change your object. You have to change the way you do things. It's almost like it gets a bit blunt after a while, the instrument. You've done it for so many times with the same person, you can't really raise the enthusiasm anymore with that particular meditation object. So you've got to move on to something else instead. So wonderful. That's a very good comment. So thank you for that. Okay, anything else? Anybody? Okay, just got a couple of questions here. One from Romania, from Nilu in Romania. How is it possible to develop metta towards yourself when you feel you are not good enough? I feel sick, ugly, stupid, and non-performant. Okay, well, what I suggest to do is don't be so judgmental of yourself, Nilu, because if you are too judgmental of yourself, that is when it's hard to have metta towards yourself. The first thing to do is to accept yourself for who you are. And I think one of the reasons why people are often judgmental towards themselves is that we think that we should do better. We think that we should know better. We think we should be able to keep the 5 precepts, as if by an act of will we can do these things. You can't do these things through an act of will. You can only do these things through gradual training over a long period of time. And to understand that you're a product of conditioning, you're a product of your past, you're a product of maybe past lives, all these things coming together, then sometimes there's nothing you can do. You just have to be the way you are. And even if that means being, I doubt very much that you are all these things that you are saying. I think you're probably a very good person. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing meditation. You wouldn't be keeping precepts and all these things. So just give yourself a bit of slack. Give yourself a bit of goodwill. Don't judge yourself so hard. There's too much judgment in this world. We don't really need all this judgment. Accept yourself, and also at the same time accept other people as well. Because often the reason we judge ourselves is because we judge others. Judgment doesn't come just towards... If you start judging, it's going to encompass everybody. You can't just judge certain people and exclude others. If you start judging, everybody's going to be included. So stop judging. and realize that we are all just product of conditioning, and we act because of that conditioning. And as I said recently to somebody, it's a miracle that we sometimes do all the good things we actually do, that we are able to break those habits and actually move in the right direction. That is such a wonderful thing, that we can actually change like that. So think of yourself, rather than think of yourself as, as in a negative way, think of yourself as moving in a positive way. And what a wonderful thing that is, to actually be able to move in a positive way. Look at the change and say, wow, I have changed. Something is going on with me here. Wow, how wonderful that is. Before I was worse, now I'm better. Don't judge yourself against some kind of perhaps unattainable ideal. That's the wrong kind of judgment. Instead, look at where you're heading, where you're going. And then you have so much more appreciation for yourself. And you actually come to have acceptance for yourself. And when you accept yourself, then you can have metta for yourself. But first you have to accept yourself for what you are. And I have no doubt that even from the fact that you are even taking part in these meditations here or elsewhere or wherever it is, that you are probably a very good person and very worthy of being liked by yourself and also by others. So if other gives you a hard time, don't worry about that. Okay, I hope that helps. The second question is from Na in Adelaide, who says that it seems like if I didn't do metta meditation first, I almost couldn't do the stillness meditation. And that's right. Sometimes it's not as if it's right to do one before the other. These things, they reinforce each other. If the metta meditation works, it reinforces the stillness. That's the whole point, because the point is to purify yourself, right? So if you feel more pure, the stillness becomes more powerful. On the other hand, if you are more still, it is easier to do metta because you have more focus and you have everything else in your mind. So these things reinforce each other, and you can do whatever works for you again. The things that I do here, are just suggestions. This is just one way of doing the meditation. You find out what works for you and do that. That is always the best way here. And sometimes you can do a little bit of stillness, just starting off just to calm down a little bit, particularly if you had a very hectic and busy day, then do a bit of metta, and then come back to the stillness again towards the end. There is no absolutely fixed pattern on these things. And eventually the idea is to get into both very deep stillness and also very deep metta meditation. Okay, so I hope that helps. Anybody else like to say anything before we call it a day? Everybody happy? Yeah? Okay, let's just pay respect to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha.